Hey everyone! Today I'm going to show you how to crochet Jingle Pup, Santa's most spirited holiday helper. So this pattern calls for DK weight yarn, and it takes approximately 12 grams in beige and 3 grams in light brown yarn. You're also going to need a 3mm hook and 7mm safety eyes, in addition to your normal crochet items like yarn needles, stitch markers, embroidery floss, and stuffing. However, the gauge doesn't matter much. You can use any size yarn and matching hook size as long as you adjust the yardage of yarn and safety eyes accordingly. If you're using a larger weight yarn and larger hook size, you'll end up using a bit more yarn. For today's video, I'm using a 4mm crochet hook and worsted weight yarn. Alright, so we're getting started on the body and the head, and the first thing that we need to do with this beige colored yarn is form a magic ring. So let's do a quick review on how to get a magic ring formed, and then how to make our first few single crochet stitches inside. Alright, so let's review how to form a magic ring. So we're going to start by taking a little length of our yarn, and I'm using white for this demonstration. Make sure you're using the correct color for the pattern that you are following along with. So I'm going to take this white, and I'm going to reserve myself a little bit of a tail. So I'm going to take the end of that yarn and I'm going to stretch it so I've got about 5 inches or so of a tail. And the tail is going to be the end that is not attached to our ball of yarn. So once we've got about 5 inches or so reserved of that tail, we're going to take our yarn hand. For me, that's my left hand, but if you're a left-handed crocheter, this might be your right hand. But we're going to take our yarn hand and make a bit of a finger guns here. So my index and my middle finger, I'm going to put them together, and I'm going to be looking at the inside of them. Then I'm going to take that tail that I've reserved, that 5 inches, and I'm going to lay it so that it's over the lower digit on my index and my middle. And then I'll take my thumb and I'm going to press the yarn to those 2 fingers. Then I'm going to take my hook hand, which is for me my right hand, but could be your left hand, and I'm going to grab the working yarn. Once I've got that grabbed, I'll take it and I'm going to wrap it around the back side of my index and my middle finger so that it's sort of close to that top digit. I'll flip my hand over so you can see. So I want it to be close to my top digit, so you can see it's closer to the 2 tops of my fingers here. So we're going to wrap that around, and then once we've got it around the top digit of those 2 fingers, we're going to bring it so that it goes behind our thumb again. So I use my thumb and I pinch that second wrap in place. Then we're going to keep wrapping, this time going around the lower digit on our 2 fingers. So I'll flip my hand over so you can see these 2 wraps here. This is that one I just made, going around that lower digit. So we'll wrap around that lower digit, and then we're going to take our working yarn and one more time snug it behind our thumb, and then just pull it out of our way. So once we've done that, we should have 2 wraps and this sort of X shape on the insides of our hands. So once we have all of the yarn wrapped around our yarn hand here, we're ready to take our crochet hook in our hook hand, and we're going to flip our yarn hand over so that we're looking at the back side of our fingers. So we should have 2 wraps, one around the top digit, one around the lower digit on our yarn hand. We're going to take our hook and slip it underneath that top wrap, and then use the hook part to snag that lower wrap and bring it underneath the top wrap. Then we're going to take both of our hands and we're going to flip them over so that we're looking at the inside and away from our body. So I'm flipping out and away from my body. And then I'm going to bring my 2 hands together, so my yarn hand and my hook hand. I'm going to bring them so the index finger here on my hook hand can touch the back side of my yarn hand. Then using the thumb and index finger of my hook hand, I'm going to grab both the wrap on my hook and the wrap still on my fingers right where they meet. So I'm going to kind of snag the 2 of them together right there. Once I've got those pinched between my thumb and index finger on my hook hand, I can let go with my thumb and then gently slide those wraps off of my index and middle finger. So now that I've done that, let's locate both the tail, that's the end that's no longer attached to our ball of yarn, so it's got this blunt cut end on it. we're going to kind of pull that over into the 12 o'clock position. So kind of up and away. And then let's locate the working yarn. That's the stuff still attached to our ball of yarn. So once we've got those two identified, we're going to take the working yarn and begin tensioning it. So to do that, we'll take our index finger on our yarn hand. That for me is my left hand. Could be your right hand for you if you're a left-handed crocheter. And we're going to slip the working yarn over the top of our index finger. Then we'll take our middle, ring, and pinky finger on our yarn hand, and we're going to wrap those around that working yarn. Once you've done that, we also need to sandwich this working yarn in between our magic ring and our tail. So to do that, I like to take my middle finger and thumb on my yarn hand, and I'm going to grab that tail with my middle finger here. And then with my thumb, I want to grab the ring. So we don't want to grab our working yarn, which is kind of going in through that ring. We want to just get the bottom end of the ring here. And once you've got those two, we're going to kind of pinch them together. And you can see that sandwiches our working yarn in between the two of them. Once we've got those grabbed with our yarn hand, we can let go with our index and thumb on our hook hand. And the ring here that's on our hook is really loose. We'll tighten that by pulling our index finger up and away. You can see how that tightens that yarn. And then once we've done that, we're ready to yarn over and draw through the loop on our hook. So we'll take our hook, put the yarn over our hook. So I kind of just swing around the back side there and grab it. And we're going to pull that working yarn directly through the loop on our hook. Once we've done that, you can let go. It's not going to come undone. It won't come untied, which is very comforting because we've spent all this time creating it. The last thing we need to do before we're ready to begin is we're going to take the tail, and you can see it's threaded through our magic ring. We're going to take that tail and we're going to pull it out from the center of that ring. And from here, we're ready to begin working in the magic ring. We also need to work over the tail as well. So we'll take that ring and we'll take the tail and we're going to set them together so that we are working over both of these strands, the ring and the tail. All right, you are ready to go ahead and continue on in your pattern. All right, so now that I have my magic ring tied, I'm ready to start in on round 1. And round 1 is telling us that we need to put 8 single crochet stitches inside of this magic ring. So to make our first single crochet stitch, we're going to be working in the ring and over the tail that we used to tie it. So let's hold those two together with our yarn hand. And then with our hook hand, we're going to take our index finger and place it on the loop that's on our hook to hold it in place. Then we'll take our crochet hook and push it through the ring and under that tail that we're holding together. And then yarn under and draw our working yarn through our magic ring and up into a nice tall loop on our crochet hook. Then we'll yarn over and draw our working yarn through the 2 loops on our hook to finish our single crochet stitch. We also want to mark this stitch because that's the first stitch of the round, and it's going to help us keep track of where we are in our pattern. So we'll take our stitch marker and just slip it through both sides of that little V shape at the top of the stitch and lock our marker in place. And we're going to continue adding single crochet stitches in this exact same way. Take our crochet hook, index finger on that loop, go through the ring, yarn under and draw through, then yarn over and draw through both. So there's my second single crochet stitch. Alright, so I have all 8 single crochet stitches inside of my magic ring. You can double check that you have the right amount by flipping your work over on the side, and starting with the stitch marker, which is our first stitch of the round, we can count this V shape. And then we don't count the loop on our hook. That's sort of like a stitch in the works. So I've got all 8. I'm going to do the magic part of my magic ring by holding that last stitch that I made and then pulling the tail. I can close that round off, which puts the last stitch I made right by the first stitch, which is great because for round 2, that's where our first stitch is going to go. Speaking of round 2, let's go ahead and get started. Round 2, we need to put 1 increase in each of the 8 stitches from round 1. And that's going to give us 16 stitches total at the end of round 2. So to increase, we're going to place 2 single crochet stitches in each stitch all the way around, starting by taking our stitch marker out and then taking our crochet hook and pushing it through front to back, both sides of the stitch, that little V shape. And then from here, making a single crochet stitch just like we did in the magic ring. Yarn under and draw through the fabric of our work. Then yarn over and draw through the remaining 2 loops on our crochet hook. We also want to mark the stitch that we just made, so it's going to kind of be behind your crochet hook. We'll push our stitch marker through just like we did with that first single crochet stitch last round. Lock it in place. Then to finish our increase, we need to make a second single crochet stitch in that same stitch we just placed the first. So we'll take our crochet hook and push it back through that space, yarn under, draw up a loop through that same space, and yarn over and draw through to finish our second single crochet stitch, which finishes our increase. So we're going to continue adding 2 single crochet stitches, or increasing, in each of these stitches all the way around. So we'll go to our next stitch of the round. You can see if you kind of rotate your work, you'll see your next stitch. I'll go through, place my first single crochet stitch, and then my second to finish my increase. And we're just going to keep increasing all the way around, which will give us 16 stitches total at the end of this round. Okay, I'm all the way around round 2, and before I move on to round 3, I'm going to give my magic ring tail, which has been hanging on the underside of our work, I'm going to give it one final kind of tight tug. Then flip my work over, and using my scissors, I'm going to trim this tail short. So we want to trim it short but not off, so leave just a little bit on the back side of your work, and then discard whatever you didn't end up needing. That's going to keep the magic ring tail out of our way as we continue working around. Alright, so we're ready for round 3, and we've got some parentheses with instructions inside of them this time. So what that means is everything inside those parentheses we need to make, in the order that it appears, the amount of times indicated outside. So let's dive right in. We'll take our stitch marker out, and we'll place 1 single crochet stitch inside of the first stitch of the round, and then mark that. So there's the first half of those parentheses. Then in the next stitch we need to increase. So we'll go to our next stitch in the round and place 1 increase. And that's everything in those parentheses once. Outside it says we need to repeat everything 8 times total for a total of 24 stitches. So we need to continue that pattern of 1 single crochet stitch, 1 increase, 7 more times. So in the next stitch of the round, we'll put 1 single crochet stitch. In the next stitch, we'll put 1 increase. And that's our second repetition. And we're just going to keep repeating that pattern. 1 single crochet stitch, 1 increase, Alright, so I just finished the last increase of round 3 and I'm ready for round 4. Round 4 we're going to put one single crochet stitch in the 24 stitches we created in round 3. So that's just one single crochet stitch in each stitch from the previous round. So don't forget, take your stitch marker out for your first stitch, make your first single crochet stitch, and then put your stitch marker right back in to keep track of where you are in your row. And we're just going to put one single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. Alright, I just made the last single crochet stitch of round 4 and I'm ready for round 5. So we've got another parentheses pattern. So we'll put one single crochet stitch in the next 5 stitches of the round. Right, there are those 5 single crochet stitches and then one increase. And then the parentheses pattern needs to be repeated 4 times. So we need to make that 5 single crochet stitches increase 3 more times for a total of 28 stitches. So here I am starting in on that second repeat. Alright, that's round 5 done. So for round 6, 7, 8, and 9, we need to put one single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. So here I am starting in on round 6. Don't forget, as you start each new round, make the first stitch and then replace the stitch marker so you can keep track of where you are in your pattern. And I will see you back here whenever I have finished the last single crochet stitch of round 9. We're ready to move on to round 10 together. Alright, so I just finished the last single crochet stitch of round 9 and I'm ready for round 10. We're going to start by placing one single crochet stitch in the next 9 stitches of the round. Alright, there are those 9 single crochet stitches. Then in the next 3 stitches, we're going to place one increase. So 3 increases back to back. Alright, so there are those 3 increases. Then one single crochet stitch in the next 5 stitches of the round. There are those 5 single crochet stitches, then another 3 increases, so just 3 of them back to back. Right, there are those 3 increases, and then one single crochet stitch in the remaining 8 stitches of the round. Alright, so that's round 10 done. Rounds 11 through 13, just like with round 6 through 9, we're going to put one single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. Don't forget to move your stitch marker up as you start each new round, and I will see you back here when I am done with the last single crochet stitch of round 13, and I'm ready to get the safety eyes placed. Alright, so I just made the last single crochet stitch of round 13, and I'm ready to get the eyes placed. So we're going to take the hook that's on our crochet hook and pull so that it comes up long, and then take our crochet hook out. And then from here, we need to flip our work over so that this loop is at the back side. So we're just going to take our piece and flip it over. And then our eyes are going to be centered in between those 3 increases that we placed back to back. So you can kind of see where they are because it sort of flares out like a bell along those increases. So we want to make sure we're looking directly at those. And then we're ready to get our eyes placed. So I'm going to be using these painted eyes today. You don't need to use safety eyes though. You can embroider these on, especially if it's going to be for a young child or a pet. But we're going to place them in the same place regardless of what kind of eye you're using. So I'm going to take the stem from my eye and count down from round 1, which is this ring here at the top, to round 9. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and between rounds 9 and 10, we'll place our first eye. Then we're going to grab our second eye, and then they're about 3 stitches apart, so I'll count over 3 stitches, and then slot the eye through that same row between 9 and 10. And then double check that they're centered on those increases. I think I need to shift both eyes 1 stitch over this direction to be a little more centered. There we go, that looks pretty good to me. And when you're happy with the eye's placement, we're going to go ahead and snap the backs on the back side. So we'll just take the little plastic backs that come with the eyes and push them onto the stem until they snap in place. And that is the eyes attached. So we're ready to continue working. So I'm going to flip my work back over, take my crochet hook, push it back through that loop we drew up long, and then pull that tail down to tighten that loop on my hook. And we're ready for round 14. So we're going to start by placing 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of our round. And then we need to make a decrease. So to decrease, we're going to be working in the front loops of the next 2 stitches. So far we've been working through both. We've been taking our hook and pushing it through both the front and back loop. To get just the front loop, we're going to kind of slide our hook up and in between the sides of that V, getting the one that's closest just to the front of our work here. Then we're ready to start our decrease. So we're going to yarn under and draw our yarn through that front loop. Then we're going to repeat that in the next front loop. So go to the next stitch, grab that front loop, yarn under and draw a loop up through that front loop, and then yarn over and draw through all 3 loops on your crochet hook. So there's our decrease. We need to repeat that pattern of 1 single crochet stitch, 1 decrease, 10 more times for a total of 11, and that's going to take us to the last stitch of the round. So we've got 1 single crochet stitch, and then 1 decrease. Let's walk through that again. We'll go through the front loop, yarn under, and draw up a loop, go through the next front loop, yarn under, and draw up a loop, then yarn over and draw through all 3. So we're going to keep repeating that pattern, 1 single crochet stitch, decrease, Alright, so there is that last decrease. Now I've just got that 1 single crochet stitch to make here. And that wraps up round 14. Round 15, we're going to start by placing 1 decrease in the first stitch and then continuing to decrease. So here's the first decrease. And then we're going to make 10 more decreases until we get to the last stitch of our round. So just keep decreasing. Alright, so there was that last decrease. I'm going to put one single crochet stitch in the last stitch of the round. And then before we make round 16, which is the last round of the body and the head, we need to stuff. So I'm going to take the loop on my crochet hook, and just like I did with the safety eyes, I'm going to draw it up long, take my crochet hook out, and we're going to put some stuffing on the inside of the head at this point. Alright, so I have the head stuffed, and I'm ready to go ahead and make that last round. So I'll go ahead, flip my work over, grab my crochet hook, go back through that loop we drew up long, and then tighten. And then for the last round, which is round 16, we're just going to decrease in each stitch all the way around. Alright, so I made my last decrease. I'm ready to fasten off. I'll do that by taking my stitch marker out, and I'm going to slip stitch to the next stitch. So I'll take my crochet hook, go through the front and the back loop of the next stitch, yarn under and draw up a loop, and then draw that loop through the loop on my hook. Then we need a tail to sew with, so we'll reserve ourselves, about 14 inches or so. Cut our working yarn, and then pull that loop on our hook until the end passes through, and then tighten that down by pulling our tail. And that is the crochet part of the head done for now. We need to close off this last round though, so we'll take this tail that we've just cut, thread it through the eye of our needle, and then we're going to be sewing through the 6 front loops of these decreases that we created. So I'm going to go directly to the left side of my slip knot here, and sew up through the front loop of that first decrease, then rotate, repeat with this next decrease. Just going to do that all the way around. Alright, so there are those 6 stitches sewn. I'm going to pull this tail to close off that last round. And then we need to secure that by tying a surface knot or a French knot. So we're going to make a little loop over the surface of our work with our tail. Then sew up through a little of that last stitch that we sewed. And then as we sew up through, also sew up through the loop we created. And then I'm holding the loop here on the surface of my work with my thumb. I'm going to keep pulling my tail, and then you can see that loop's going to start to wrap around our tail until it tightens into a knot. Alright, so from here we're going to go ahead and weave this tail in. We'll sew down through close to where this knot is on our work, and then just up through any old place here on the head. And pull. That's going to send the knot to the inside and also weave our tail in. So from here we can unthread our needle, and by pulling that tail tight and trimming close to the surface of our work, we will weave the rest of it in. We can discard anything we didn't end up using, and that is the head and body done. Let's move on to the next part of the pattern. Alright, so next up we need to make the nose, and we're going to be working with that same beige brown color that we used for the head and the body. And we're going to begin once again with a magic ring. So let's go ahead and get one of those formed. Alright, I've got my magic ring formed, and I'm ready for round 1, where we're going to place 5 single crochet stitches inside of the magic ring. Alright, once you have all 5 single crochet stitches inside of your magic ring, you can do the magic ring part, pull the tail to close off round 1. And then for round 2, we're going to increase in each of the 5 stitches from round 1. Alright, that's round 2 done for me. Let's pull the tail tightly one last time. Flip our work over and then give it a short trim. Alright, and then we're ready for round 3, which is the last round of the nose. We're going to put one single crochet stitch in each of the 10 stitches all the way around. So the nose works up pretty quick. Alright, so there's that last single crochet stitch. I'm ready to go ahead and fasten off. I'm going to slip stitch to the first stitch of the round. And then we need a long tail to sew with, so reserve yourself 12 to 14 inches. And we'll pull that slip stitch until the tail we cut passes through it as well. And tighten. Alright, so we have the nose crocheted, and now we need to get the black part of the nose embroidered on. So I've got my black yarn threaded through my yarn needle here, and I went ahead and tied a knot here at the end of my black yarn too. So I'm going to take the yarn needle, I'm going to pass it up through the center of that magic ring, and pull, and that knot's going to stay on the inside. And then we're going to sew a small triangle shape here by going up through the space between rounds 2 and 3. And then we'll come back over maybe a stitch apart from that and sew back down through the magic ring opening. And then we're going to fill this triangle shape in by just sending a couple more stitches down in the space between stitches here. I'll go back down through the magic ring. So you can see that kind of fills in that triangle shape, and then I'm going to send some stitches across the top to kind of hide where all of these stitches go in. So one, we'll see if we need a second. I'll go ahead and sew a second stitch across the top. Alright, so there is the nose, and then we need to sew a straight stitch down underneath to make the mouth. So I'm going to come up through where that magic ring is, and then just send one long straight stitch down underneath to form the mouth. And that is the nose and mouth embroidered on. I'm going to flip my work inside out, and I'm going to kind of roll it so that I can see the inside a little easier. We're going to tie another surface knot here with this black. It's just like we did when we closed the head up. Grab some of the fabric of your work and pull. And then we can trim this black tail short. We don't have to weave it in. It's going to hide out on the inside of the nose. So flip it back inside. Alright, so now that we have the nose embroidered on, we can go ahead and attach it to the head. So I'm going to thread the tail through my needle. We can grab the head, and the nose is going to go centered underneath kind of the eyes here. And then I'm going to pin this because I find as I sew the nose on sometimes, it'll start to twist, and we want the nose to stay centered. So I'll add a few straight pins to help me as I sew it on. And then we're ready to attach. So we're going to just go through some of the fabric of the head, and then through some of the stitches on that last round of the nose. And then just slowly work our way around, sewing through each stitch and through the fabric of the head. Alright, so once you have the nose sewn on all the way around, we can go ahead and tie another surface knot to weave this tail in. So there's the knot, and send the tail across. Then once the tail is woven in, we can trim. And then while we're sewing things onto the face, we should probably add the white shines and the eyebrows on. So let's start with the whites. So I'm going to get a little white threaded through the eye of my needle. And then we're going to sew down and in between the space between stitches. So kind of go in between some of your stitches and try not to grab any of the fabric of your work. We're going to come up underneath the center of the right eye and leave a tail on the outside of our work because we're going to come back to that. Then we're going to send a long stitch around the outside of the eye. So sew down through the fabric of your work at the top center of this eye, and then sew across the way to the top center of the far eye. And we're going to pull this stitch tight, which is going to keep it right around the eye. And then sew around the outside of this eye and down through the center of, and then sew across to the tail on this side. And then pull that stitch tight to hold it in place. And that adds the white shines around the eyes. We can unthread our needle and tie those two tails together. I like to double knot mine just to be extra secure. And then trim very short. And then we can take our needle and pull the work up around that knot, which is going to send it to the inside. Alright, so there are the white eye shines added. Let's go ahead and add the eyebrows next. Alright, so let's go ahead and get the eyebrows attached. I've got some black yarn threaded through my needle. We're going to sew in the space between stitches again, and then I'm going to be about 2 stitches above that first eye, leave a tail on the outside, and we're just going to sew one small stitch straight up over that round. And I'll repeat on this side too. Then I will sew across and come out where I went down through that first time. You can see that gets the eyebrows added on. Then we're going to tie these two tails together as well. Then pull the fabric of our work up again to hide the knot to the inside. Alright, so there are the face details added. Let's move on to the next part of the pattern. Alright, so we need to get started on the band. We're going to be using this light brown colored yarn. And we need to start by tying a slip knot, but we want our slip knot to have a really long tail. So reserve quite a bit of length here on this end of the slip knot. And then to tie that knot, we're going to take the yarn and sort of loop it around itself. So we'll lay our working yarn out flat, and then with that long tail that we've made, kind of tie, cross over, making like the lowercase letter B or a little loop here. And then we're going to pass this underneath that loop that we have here on our workspace. You can see it's sort of like wrapping itself around. And then we're going to pull this length up from underneath and grab these two ends and pull to tie a slip knot with a really long tail. And then we can take our crochet hook and go through that loop and tighten it down. So we need this long tail because we're going to be using it to attach the band onto Jingle Pup's head. So then we're now ready to go ahead and start in on the band, and we're going to start by chaining 10 stitches. So be sure you've got your working yarn, the stuff attached to the ball, tensioned and not this long tail. And we're going to chain by yarning over and drawing our yarn through the slip knot we made, which makes our first chain. And we're going to keep chaining 3, 4 until we have 10, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So now that we have those 10 chains, we're going to be in the second chain from our hook. We need to add an increase. So we're going to put 2 single crochet stitches in that second chain. Then we'll work 1 single crochet stitch in the next 7 stitches of this chain. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then in that slip knot that we tied, we need to work 3 single crochet stitches. So 1, 2, 3. Then give that slip knot a tighten by pulling that long tail, and we're going to swing around and work down the other side of the chain here. We're just going to place 1 single crochet stitch in those 8 chain stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So then we're going to slip stitch that first single crochet stitch, the first one in that increase. And then we need to leave a long tail on this side too, because that's what we're going to use to tie the band onto the head. So cut a long tail, and then we're going to yarn over and draw that tail through the last loop on our hook and pull. So there is the band done. Let's move on to the next part of the pattern. Alright, so next up we need to make the horns, and we need to make 2 horns total. And both horns are comprised of a small horn and a big horn. So I'm going to start with the small horn here on the first antler. We're going to form another magic ring. Alright, so there's my magic ring formed. I'm going to place 5 single crochet stitches inside for round 1. Once you have all 5 single crochet stitches, you can tighten the magic ring. And then for rounds 2 and 3, we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch around. Alright, so I just finished round 3. I'm ready to fasten off the small horn, and I'm going to slip stitch to the next stitch. And then cut a short tail, don't need much. And then pull that tail through my slip stitch and tighten. And then I'm going to trim the magic ring tail. And then tuck the tail that I just cut into the inside of my antler here, a small antler, just to kind of keep it out of my way. So it's tucked in a little bit. I'll give it a trim. Alright, and there is the small antler done. So let's move on to the large antler, or the big horn. Again, starting with another magic ring. Then for round 1, we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the net. And then for round 1, we're going to place 5 single crochet stitches inside the magic ring. And pull that tail to close off. And then rounds 2, 3, and 4, so 1 extra round here, we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch around. Alright, so there's that last single crochet stitch of round 4. So with the big horn, we're going to continue working by crocheting the small and big horns together. Before we start, let's go ahead and trim the magic ringtail that's just hanging on the inside. And then we're ready for round 5. So we're going to just go right through one of the stitches on the small horn. So I'm going to go ahead and just grab, and I'll form my first single crochet stitch just right into that stitch there on the small horn, and then mark that. And we're going to keep adding stitches, one in the 5 stitches of the small horn. So there's our first. Here's our second, third, fourth, and fifth. And then we'll cross over and begin working in the 5 stitches of the big horn. So cross right over, and add a single crochet stitch. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Alright, so that's round 5 done. Round 6, we'll take our stitch marker out and place our first single crochet stitch in where that marker was. So here's 1 single crochet stitch. We're going to make 2 more, so 3 single crochet stitches. 2, 3, and then 1 decrease. And we'll repeat that a second time, so 3 single crochet stitches. And 1 decrease. And round 7, which is the last round of the horns. 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches. And then a decrease. And repeat that a second time. So 2 single crochet stitches. Decrease. Alright, so that is the horn crocheted. We need to slip stitch to the next stitch and leave a long tail to sew with, and then pull so that slip stitch, the tail that we cut, passes through, and tighten down. And there's one of the horns done. We need to make a second one, and then we can get them attached to the band that we crocheted. Alright, so I have both of my horns crocheted, and I'm ready to get them attached. So first let's grab that band, and then the tail that we left behind when we slip stitched, we need to sew it through this stitch here, the 3 that we added, the middle one, so that it's on the outside of our work. So go ahead and thread that through the eye of your needle first. And we're just going to send it from the underside of the work and up through that middle single crochet stitch. So it's on the outside of the band. So go ahead and unthread. And then we're going to attach those antlers on to the band, starting with 1 here. So we'll thread the tail through our needle. And it's going to attach kind of off to one side, maybe 2 stitches away from the outside edge here. And I'll just sew down into the band, up through one of the stitches on that end there. I'm just going to sew down and around all of the stitches on the outside of the last row here until the antler is fully attached to the band. And careful not to get your fastening ties tied up with your working yarn here. Alright, so there is one of the antlers attached to the band. I'm going to tie a surface knot here on the underside of the band itself. and then weave this tail in by sewing it just right up inside of the horn and out through a random spot. And then I will trim. And that gets the first antler attached. So we're going to repeat with the second antler on the other side of the band. Alright, so I have both of the horns attached to the band, and I'm ready to move on to the last part of the pattern, which is the ears. So we need to make two. I'll walk you through how to make the first. You'll need to make a second. We can come back and get them attached and then get all of our parts assembled. So we're going to be working with this beige colored yarn again and starting with another magic ring. Alright, so now that I have my magic ring formed, I'm ready for round one. We're going to put 6 single crochet stitches inside of this ring. Alright, when you have all 6 stitches in your magic ring, you can pull the tail. And we're ready for round two. We've got a parentheses pattern to repeat, starting with 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round. And then 1 increase. We're going to repeat that 2 more times, so 1 single crochet stitch, increase. Alright, that's round 2 done. Round 3, we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round. And then 1 increase. Repeat that 2 more times, so 2 single crochet stitches, increase. That's round 3 done. Let's pull that magic ring tail and give it a trim at this point. And round 4, we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around, so just 1 in each. Alright, that's round 4 done. Round 5, we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round. And then 1 decrease. Repeat that pattern of 2 single crochet stitches, decrease. Right, that's round 5 done. Round 6 and 7, we're going to just put 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. Alright, that's round 7 done. I'm ready for round 8. 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round. And then 1 decrease. And repeat that 2 more times. Alright, and then round 9, we're just going to put 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. Alright, so there's that last stitch. I'm ready to fasten off. I'm going to do that by slip stitching in the first stitch of that round, and then cutting a long tail to sew with because we'll use it to attach the ears. And then pull and tighten. There's one of the ears crocheted, so let's go ahead and make a second one and then get them attached to the head. Alright, so I have both of my ears crocheted and I'm ready to attach them. So I'm going to start by threading the tail through the eye of my needle. And then we're going to sew them so that they're flat. So kind of squish them, flatten them so they're ready to go. And they're going to attach to row 6 of the head, so, and along the sides, of course. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So they're going to sit right along row 6 there. And we're going to sew them so that we sew through both layers of the ear as we sew. So grab some of the fabric of the head and then sew through both layers of the ear. And then grab some more fabric of the head and through some more of the ear until the ear is sewn on all the way across the top. So there you see I have the ear sewn on. Then to secure, we need to tie a surface knot and then weave this tail into the head and out through just any old place. Then trim. So there's one of the ears attached. We need to repeat with the second ear on the other side of the head at round 6. Alright, so I have both of the ears attached, so there's only one thing left to do. We're going to take that band with the antlers and set it atop the head. And we're going to tie the antlers on the underside. So we can just loop this around and tie a square knot. And then I'm going to tie a bow so it looks extra festive here at the bottom. And then I left a really long tail because I wasn't sure how much we would need to attach the antlers to the head. So I'm going to give that a trim too. So you don't need to be super long. And that gets the antlers attached to the head and wraps up Jingle Pup's tutorial.